Welcome to the Gregory Nesmith Show, where we get personal about the news and the culture. It's that time of the week again, where we take you on a journey. Shout out to all the underdogs, to my people, and the occasional Trump supporter that might have accidentally found the show. We appreciate you all. And as always, to take you on the journey each week, you have your host, Gregory Nesmith, entrepreneur, also in the spread and special stuff, and founder of the Underdog Stuff Company. And also, unfortunately, the proud owner of a cast that is on my hand right now that you will see once we get the Facebook Live up and running, or if you go to the live stream on WHCR.org for those who like to watch. And I'm sure at some point, Asha Davis, who is in Studio 2, will probably make some joke about the fact that my hand is in a very big cast right now. With that, though, she is in studio, and she is an award-winning advertising executive, comedy writer, and a paid stand-up comic.
Yes, I am.
And a proud Canadian representing Toronto, Torontonian.
Canada, Torontonian, and it's not just Drake that's from there.
Shout out to the Six and to Mr. Do Right and Kill Everything Drake. One of the best acronyms turned into a rhyme of all time. All right. 1 year ago today, something that was just a dream, just a part of my imagination, something that I thought about, but it didn't actually exist. And as many of you know, I am actually coming up on a birthday this Wednesday on November 22nd. And I'll be turning the big 4-2. And so rewind a year ago, I had this dream of one day having a talk radio show and it being in New York City. And that was still just an idea. Didn't exist. And I had a lot of people say to me, well, what radio experience do you have? Are you sure you can make it happen? Is it too late to start? You're getting old. Shouldn't you have started that years ago? All fair questions. All fair concerns. I took it in. Luckily, I didn't let it stop me, but I took it in. I did at times question, maybe I waited too long to pursue this radio thing. Maybe you're thinking the same thing. Maybe you're sitting there listening to me right now going, there's something you want to do, and maybe you're thinking you waited too long too. Totally natural to feel that way. And there's likely a lot of people who may have thought they waited too long to start whatever business idea they had or whatever nonprofit idea they had. But I'm here to tell you that it's not too late to get started. And that's because there's a lot of people who get started at different times in their life. And I wanted to make sure I highlighted some of them because I know when I saw this list of people who started businesses at different times in their life, it gave me some hope. And also some realistic optimism that it is never too late to start. So, to anybody who's in their teens right now listening, shout out to any of the underdogs of my people or the occasional Trump supporter that might have accidentally found the show. Shout out to any of you who might be in your teenage years. It's not too late for you to start something. You know why? Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg was in his teens. I believe he was 19 years old when he started what would become Facebook. So if you're an underdog and in your teens, it's not too late. You can start Facebook or whatever your Facebook is. You might be saying, Gregory, I'm no longer in my teens. I'm in my 20s now. Is it too late? Can I start something? Have I waited too long? Does fortune side with those who dare? Does fortune side with the youth? Underdogs, if you're in your 20s, I got news for you. It's not too late for you either. These are some of the people and businesses that were started by people in their 20s. Ever heard of Steve Jobs and Apple? He was in his 20s. Any of my motorcycle riders out there? Shout out to folks on their Harleys. Arthur Davidson started Harley Davidson when he was in his 20s. Anybody ever Google anything lately? Anyone? Anyone? I know I use Google for a lot of things. Larry Page over at Google, he was in his 20s when that started. Because guess what? It's never too late. Underdog stuff turns 1 year old today or this week. And I'm glad that I didn't think it was too late. But I know some of you are still listening going, again, teenagers, folks in their 20s. You're like, I'm older than that though, Gregory. Is it too late for me too? No. It's not too late. Because if you're in your 30s and an underdog or one of my people, guess what? You could start the next Harpo Productions and be like Oprah when she was in her 30s and started Harpo. Anybody watch BET lately? Robert Johnson was in his 30s when he started BET. And for all those folks trying to make it through the rest of the year who may not like their jobs, trying to hold on for that bonus to start the year off, getting ready to go to their holiday parties, about to start dropping resumes and start looking for a new job, you might be using LinkedIn. And Reid Hoffman didn't start that till he was in his late 30s. Because it sounds very optimistic. It sounds very dreamy when folks say stuff like, it's never too late. You can start when you want to start. But I wanted to back that up with some actual reality of, it's true. If you passed your teens, it's okay if you missed your Mark Zuckerberg moment in Facebook, because if you're in your 20s, you can still start Google. Or it's okay if you missed your 20s calling and you didn't start Apple like Steve Jobs. You can be in your 30s and start LinkedIn like Reid Hoffman did. I know what you're thinking. I've gone with the teens, the 20s, and the 30s. And now you're like, Gregory, you're not going to have any answers for folks over 40. Because that's midlife crisis territory. Folks got families. They got kids. They don't have time to take risks and start new things. Do you have any examples past 40? I bet you don't. Come on now. You know I do. For those underdogs out there who think it's too late to get started, if you missed your calling in your teens, you missed your callings in your 20s, you missed your calling in your 30s, guess what? You could still be like Jeffrey Brotman and start Costco. A lot of people shopping at Costco these days. You can go put on some of your fitness clothes. How many people walking around in Lululemon lately? Well, Chip Wilson was in his 40s when he started that powerhouse fitness lifestyle company, Lululemon. A lot of people walking around in those clothes these days. Chip was in his 40s when he started it. And I'll give you even one more example. Estee Lauder, started by Estee Lauder, who was north of 50 years old when she realized that it wasn't too late for her to start. So as I come up on the year anniversary and the 50th episode, and thinking back to a year ago when I questioned, was it too late to start? Did I miss my calling? I'm glad that I didn't stop. I'm glad I started. And then the goal is hopefully that one day someone will be reading a list of people who started stuff in their late 30s or in their early 40s. And hopefully Gregory Nesmith and Underdog Stuff will make that list. And hopefully you'll make that list too. Now, all that being said, I used to think that the start was the hard part. You know how people say the hardest step is the first step. I'm here to tell you, after a year now of doing what we do here, some of the late nights that Asha Davis and I have had when we used to do the night shift, along with Kirsten Magwood, who would join us during those times. I used to think the start was the hard part. But then I realized I've started a lot of things in my life. I've started more things than I've actually ever finished in my life. And so it got me to thinking that maybe, just maybe, starting the Gregory Nesmith Show, or when Oprah started Harpo, or when Steve Jobs started Apple, maybe the hard part wasn't actually the start. It was actually the consistency to keep grinding and keep going. Because I don't know about you, but there were some nights where I probably would have preferred to stay home and get some rest over this year journey. There were some nights I'm sure Asha had some work to do for her day job and didn't necessarily have the energy to come in here on a school night, as they say, on a work night. But she did. And so while I want to shout out all of you who have been wondering, can you start? Is it too late to start? I'm praying for you that you will start. But I'm here to tell you that, spoiler alert, that's actually going to be the easy part. The hard part's going to be, can you keep going? And that got me to really thinking about the grind, the journey of an underdog, and what it takes to keep going. Because I don't know about you, but when we first started this whole journey, I was hoping that we'd have thousands of downloads in the first month. We get picked up by another radio station. Maybe we'd be nationally syndicated by now. We'd have able to monetize the podcast, right? That's what I was thinking.
I mean, we doing all right. Aren't we number 33 in the self-help category?
In society and culture.
Society, but
that's what I'm saying. That's even
better.
Yeah. So you're right. And so actually, I want to. So now Asha reminds me of two things I've learned over the past year. One is, underdogs, don't be so hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. Because as Asha points out, there are things that we get to be proud of while we're on the journey. So for one, over 13,000 downloads since we started the podcast last year.
That's a lot.
That's
like more than 1,000 downloads a month.
And it's interesting you say that, because I had a friend who one day I was getting down on, like, I want the stats to be even better. And her point was, she said, what if you hosted an event at a stadium? And she said, what if I told you 13,000 people were going to show up? How would you feel? Just to kind of put in perspective what 13,000 means.
Or if you were hosting an event, if you hosted a monthly event and you consistently had 1,000 people coming, which is actually a very easy, like, if that's what you're doing, that's a big deal.
And I'm going to build on that. In addition to the downloads, we have over 1,000 people a month watching the Facebook Live and or viewing us on YouTube. So over 2,000 people viewing and or downloading the show every month.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. And shout out to each of you who have made that happen. And now, with that said, we talk about the consistency of the grind, is that it takes a little while. And one of my favorite sayings I was reminded of as we come up on the year anniversary is that it takes a few years, or as the saying goes, sometimes it takes years for a person to become an overnight success.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes years for a person to become an overnight success.
Preach. It's Sunday, right?
It is Sunday.
Okay.
And so I wanted to give a couple examples of how this really touched me. And I say it for you, and I say it just as much for you and I, Asha, for us to remember that it takes some years to become an overnight success. And I know you'll be able to relate to that as you're on your journey now in terms of comedy writing and stand-up and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to look at a couple popular people or brands and just put in perspective that their grind took some time to become a quote-unquote overnight success. How many people use Facebook?
Who? We on there now. Gregory.
GregoryNesmith. That's facebook.com/Gregory Nesmith. We're up and live on the Facebook?
Yeah.
Shout out to all the folks watching on Facebook Live. And if you want to join the conversation, you can join it at area code 212-650-6903. Facebook, we're on it. A lot of people are on it. It took Facebook 5 years to become profitable. 5 years.
I mean, to be fair, it's easy to not be profitable for 5 years when your parents are rich enough to send you to Harvard. But I'm going to leave that right there.
Yes, but let's point out that if you look at most businesses, at least year one, and likely in year two, it's hard for them to turn a profit because they're investing in a lot of one-time costs and startup costs.
Right, but what that means is that when you want to start a business, you just have to be aware that you have to have enough to sustain you.
Yes.
For that.
And it's a reminder to me, too, that the fact that we haven't necessarily turned a profit or been able to monetize the Gregory Nesmith show, that's okay. We're in year one.
We're in year one.
Yeah,
what are we trying to do here?
We're building.
We're building.
Kevin Durant, my favorite basketball player, now the reigning finals MVP and NBA champion, took him 9 years to become an NBA champion.
Yeah, that's a lot of years.
It's a long time.
Well, some didn't never even had one. Oh.
So people talk about, fortune size with the youth, and is it youth or is it experience? Well, Kevin Durant's 28 years old, but he worked at his craft for 9 years before he became a champion at it. Putting in the work. Amazon took them at least 10 plus years to become the number one retailer online.
10 years?
At least 10 years.
But that's to become number one. But they were making money from the start.
It was, but just to think, starting from selling some books to now we know them as one of the top retailers, regardless of whether it's online or brick and mortar. But it took them a while.
Yeah.
And then how many people be Netflixing and chilling?
Well, it was Saturday. The wintertime's coming up. So.
It's cuffing season. So for all those who Netflix and chill, it took them 13 years to knock off Blockbuster.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And we celebrate them now, and they have all these great TV series. They're winning awards. They're seen as one of the great networks of our time, and took them 13 years to knock off Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Because I may want it now, you may want it now, you may want it fast, but it doesn't work that way.
Well, I think, too, what's also really important, I know we're going to get into the news shortly, but I think what's really important to understand is that your measure of success is not only about you. Like Netflix started their business with DVDs. Netflix got popular as DVD players became obsolete when internet access in your home and unlimited internet and became more mainstream. Once they figured out how to compress the videos in Netflix to make it run fast on your internet, that's when they succeeded. So it was, if they had figured that out from the beginning, they still would have taken that long, right? Because people weren't ready to give up their DVD players. So I think, too, even understanding that it's not just you, it's it'll happen when the world's ready for you, I think is really important.
Yes, and there's something to be said about being in the game, too. So they were in the game playing, and they made some good bets, and it worked out for them. But it took some time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say underdogs, yeah, there's something in the challenge of starting, but what I would really want to leave you with is to really stick to it once you get started, because the grind, the consistency of really making it happen is where the magic does happen.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we have kept going and now get to celebrate our 50th show and our 1 year anniversary. With that, I say thank you and grateful for making it to this 11th time, and look forward to many more shows and many more years to come. And as always, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. Underdogs, can't nobody do it like you do it. Nobody.